Welcome, everyone. This is David Morgan of themorganreport.com. And today I have Mike of Rethinking the Dollar. And Mike, shout out. I've done this with a few people that I'm close to, and you are one of them. I call it the Mutual Admiration Society. But, I think, reached out to me first. I forget, but we connected, and you have a lot of powerful things to say. But I say that to say this: you have really come on strong, I'd say, the last few months. I
Appreciate it.
don't follow you as closely as I'd like, but I've started to follow you even closer than I have in the past. And I think you really, really have a very solid understanding of what's going on. So let's start off with the bio, because there'll be people that on my channel that probably don't know who you are. So we'd have a bio. And after you get done with the bio, Mike, I want to jump right into it. And I
All right.
want you to tell us from your perspective how we got here.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Dave, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to connect. And definitely it's been a pleasure being able to have collaborated. So I think maybe our first time doing an interview was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And so, so my name is Mike Manwell. I do Rethinking a Dollar. And so I came across this subject matter, just, a part of my whole quest to just better understand monetary policy. And it stemmed from my younger years when I had a chance to travel and to basically live in different parts of the world. And so from that, having a chance to interact with different cultures, different monetary systems, such as living in Argentina, getting paid in the peso, and then living in Switzerland, getting paid in the Swiss franc, and seeing a complete difference in standard of living, cost of living, and it just sparked my curiosity to continue to educate myself because I went to school for business, graduated, knew nothing about how the economy works, what money was for that matter. And so it really inspired me to just want to learn more. So when I came back to the U.S., really started rethinking a dollar, and I had a chance to connect with you and just to understand what money was from a lawful money, sound money standpoint, the Austrian school of thought. And then from that moment, I've just been blown away with the things I've discovered and having a chance to talk to a variety of people in this space. And I've been blessed to be able to, connect with you several times to further my education. And so rethinking the dollar came about just from realizing that, at this current moment, there's, complete chaos around the world. And every single nation has their own set of problems. And the Federal Reserve System and the U.S. government is no different. And so I guess because we have the reserve currency for now, we're as they say, the cleanest shirt in a basket of dirty laundry. But then again, based upon history, there's a cyclical turnover of reserve currencies every 50 to 100 or so years, give or take. And I think we're on the cusp now of a major turning point in human history. And it has a lot to do with our monetary system, but also the new emergence of what I also call the governance crisis, which is the merger of private-public cooperation to execute something that I think is very concerning, and it has to do with the Great Reset. And based upon the way things are unfolding, it's happening at a much faster rate than I could have ever imagined. And I think it has a lot to do with the introduction of the decentralized cryptographic token space that I like to say, and how a lot of people have been lured in that direction. And I think based upon where we're at now, especially after I think it was about 2 weeks ago with Davos meeting and the amount of excitement around the cryptographic, crypto blockchain space, we are well on way to something that I don't think a lot of people understand the magnitude of. And, I'll dial back in a minute, but I think we're definitely on course to some type of biblical proportion of where we're heading to as far as that projection of a one world currency, one world government. And so that's kind of how things have shifted for me from talking about monetary literacy now to, ultimately a governance crisis that I think more people need to pay attention to.
Thank you, Mike. I know you prepared for for our interview. Do you have any slides that you want to bring up and comment on before we move on? Because the next segment, I want to talk a lot about the crypto space.
Yeah, definitely. So I like to, and so one of the things on my side is I talk about monetary literacy, just basically the simple nuts and bolts as to how and to what and how money has evolved over the last 100 and I think about 13 years or so since the Federal Reserve became our third central bank here in the U.S. And so I got a set of visual aids here, but one thing I found best for myself is to take my thoughts and put it into some form of visual presentation, and that's what I do on my side with my community, just to give them a bigger viewpoint as to what's really going on here. So the very first one I'll share with you happens to be what I consider a little glimpse at history, and so this is what I call the changing of the monetary order. And so as you guys can see here, every 100 or so years, there's been a changing of the monetary guard, ultimately referring to just a shift out of an old currency as well as a government structure that, I guess, ran the international stage when it came to whatever currency it was. So as you guys can see in the background, there's a burning $100 bill symbolizing where we're at now, I think, with the Federal Reserve note and Federal Reserve system. And so I have some key dates up there, most recent ones for the U.S., and I put 1921 to 2022 just to play with some numbers there, but ultimately signifying how the British pound was transitioned after World War I and all the things that came with that. There's a whole list of history events that took place. But I marked this year, 2022, as a year where things are going to change, because it was, I think, February where this current administration mentioned that there will be a need to further to investigate the use of a central bank digital currency. And when that white paper or whatever it was that came out, I knew that that was the turning point, that from that moment, we were going to hear more about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. And this would not be the case had it not been for the advent of this new decentralized cryptographic blockchain space. So it's just very timely how things are unfolding. And then at the very top, I have to be determined. And it's my suspicion that 2023 will be the year that we officially hear the announcement of some type of rollout of the Fed coin. I call it the electronic USDC, or USD rather. And so that right there will be the turning point to where I think the world, once this next iteration of currency will be introduced, will basically turn their backs officially on the Federal Reserve note system. And so it's no surprise whatsoever, because as you guys can see here, every country has gone through their have had a turn at running the world reserve currency status, in a sense. And of course, well before now, it was predominantly gold and silver based, but debt, war, and everything like that basically brought all that to an end. And here we are now, war, debt, and everything of the like. And so the next slide here I'll share with you just gives you an idea as to how within the last 100 plus years, how the money here, or the currency money here, has changed in several fashions. And so as you guys can see here, from the 1850-ish onward, we went from a bimetallic standard. Of course, you guys, your community knows that, but every couple decades or so, there was a major change from all the different coinage acts. And so as you guys can see, the yellow part here signifying gold and silver, the dark green referring to the backed paper notes. And then, of course, the light green was the introduction of the unbacked paper altogether. And bit by bit, from 1900 to 1950 to 1990, there has been a less amount of unbacked paper. And, of course, the advent of the electronic currency from the commercial banks and that particular fractional reserve lending model and things of that nature. But yet, what I want to draw attention to is that as of right now, and this is a year old or so, but as of 2021, as you guys can see, I'll try to zoom in here, from approximately 2% of our current total monetary base being in paper form, the majority of it is 98%. And so ultimately at that moment, at this time frame here, there is nowhere to go as far as what options there will be for currency other than digits. And so our current commercial bank fractional reserve digital dollar representations is what is what has taken place now in this current shift. And so at some point real soon, I'm of the mindset that there will be some type of event that will take us away from the current structure we have, where people who have cash, it of course would be of value still. But then again, that's the whole cashless society push, which is, well underway. And if the Federal Reserve happens to backtrack, which a lot of people think they're going to do this year, then that will put some type of pressure on them and how people will be looking to run the cash. And that's a problem, to hinder their transition to this solely digital economy that they want to take us into. And so this to me just resembles how it was inevitable that digital representations of currency would be something that the central banking model would run to, just because it brings about more control for them, less freedom for us, less options for us. And of course, it removes the last bit of tangible currency that we can hold in our hands, especially as gold and silver has been taken out of our hands and completely removed from the human psyche, it seems. And then to keep moving forward, and this is just my opinion as to what's really at stake here. So as you guys can see on the screen here, the purchasing power of the current Federal Reserve note is basically near zero. And so I like to say it's already sub-zero just because you can no longer purchase any single item of value for a single dollar these days. But it took 19 administrations to get us to this point, to where it's my suspicion that based upon all the things I've been studying, uh, Joe Biden will be the last administration of this current monetary structure, just because he's a part of the agenda to, I guess, as they say, build it back better. And that, of course, that constitutes the use of a central bank digital currency of some form pretty soon. And so, along with this history lesson here, every political figure, Republican, Democrat, you name it, they've all chipped in at eroding the purchasing power of our savings, our investments, our retirements, you name it, because it's all denominated in this currency note here, which is on its way out, in my personal opinion. And what better way to transition out other than by being told that at some point in time, and of course, here's the Economist cover that I've been using a lot lately, just to highlight how, nothing we're experiencing now is by coincidence. It's not by accident. It's my opinion that we're strategically placed at this current point where we're talking about currencies. Like, we would not be talking about money, gold or silver as much as we are now if it wasn't for this suggestion, prophecy, whatever you want to call it, from this particular cover here, representing the fact that at 2018-ish, there will be a lot of fiat currencies in flames right now. And I would equate that to the extreme amount of inflation and the complete destabilization of our monetary system for every single country. But yet the currencies are burning. And we were told that at this exact same time, approximately, to get ready for a world currency. Now, Dave, just, I'm ranting a lot, but just out of sheer coincidence, how likely is it that around the same time, the decentralized cryptocurrency space is excelling and everybody's calling for adoption and running towards what appears to be the preferred method of providing the unbanked interoperability across the world, and giving everybody a chance to be a part of be their own bank, and all those cliche models that is being thrown out there. What's the probability of this being a coincidence in your opinion, Dave?
Almost none.
Right. And so that's my point. And so this is what, really has really lit my fire lately. And I've been very active on Twitter, as you mentioned, about just trying to share the alternative side of this, because none of this is coincidence. And then you have to ask yourself a question, why now? What is my role in this? And that's where I've noticed a lot of celebrities, a lot of entertainers, a lot of politicians, they've all jumped on this digital currency bandwagon. And it's very concerning to me, because it's not about my generation, your generation. It's about the younger generation that only knows what it's like to tap and pay, to swipe a card, and to have, instant access to funds through all these fintech companies. And so it's no coincidence that we're here. And it should be of concern to people, because this is just, in my opinion, just step one to what's really coming. And of course, it has to do with, the World Economic Forum and their recent meeting and on how to further advance their agenda called the Great Reset. And what better way to, I guess, own nothing? And that one part of their mission statement is you'll own nothing and be happy with it. And they gave a time frame, approximately 2030. What better way to actually execute that than by convincing the world that there's some type of realistic value long-term in computer code? And that's where I get to the point where it's like, just something doesn't seem right. And then, of course, I put together, a couple other, things worth mentioning, how this is just a little cover that I put together on my own to counter the Economist cover. And so I call it the Banksters. And so I did this a couple weeks ago, and it so far so good. It gotten a lot of, thumbs up, thumbs down. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to be truthful. I want to be, non-biased as I can, just give people both sides. But I can just run this down real quick. I just said, are you ready for Bitcoin? And this stems from the last 2 years in particular, as we've come out of this lockdown global health situation that is the catalyst for the introduction of all this stuff as a solution given to us by the orchestrators of the ones trying to create our future, according to what's coming out of the Davos World Economic Forum crowd. But no one seems to ask any serious questions at this current moment, because it's already been accepted that this type of technology is the future, which, of course, I'm not anti-software, anti-cryptography. It's important. But then again, in the hands of evil individuals or bad actors, it can be used for harm against humanity. And the way things are shaping out, I'm too convinced that because this is not coincidental, this only plays into furthering the agenda of the central banking and the government merger that I talked about earlier, leading to all the things that come with the fourth industrial revolution, which I'm going to get into in a moment. But just real quick, to the far left of this cover here, you have a character, Satoshi Nakamoto, who at this current moment, it's irrelevant who that individual is, what group it is. No one seems to care because the white paper revealed the fact that we need a peer-to-peer way to transact. Okay, fine. I'll live with that. But then again, how coincidental, once again, is it that, as I put at the very bottom here, the Rothschild, which happens to be the, of course, your audience knows, but they are the what I consider the monetary overlords of our monetary system. And at the same time, they told us that they're the primary shareholders of The Economist magazine, amongst many other businesses or whatever. But we were told 34 years ago that at this current moment, we would be looking for solutions. And of course, here it says a world currency. And then to fast forward to this current moment, a character comes about 20 or so years later named Satoshi Nakamoto out of the blue, and everybody just dismissed its origin, why, what, where, how, when. And then we moved to the very first country that made Bitcoin legal tender, was it last year, if I'm not mistaken. And we have a young guy here who's leading the charge in helping bring adoption of this particular project here to the world. And everyone's excited and everyone's jumping on it. And all the celebrities, all the gurus in this space, the maximalists, they are now taking advantage of the opportunity of being a part of this project and trying to promote adoption even further. And then you fast forward a year or so later, or a year later rather, and this is where it really came home to roost for me, is when there was a meeting May 16th to May 18th in El Salvador where 32 central banks and 12 finance ministers all gathered in El Salvador to, I guess, further discuss how they can adopt and incorporate Bitcoin in particular into their country's monetary policy. And what stood out to me is the fact that every single one of these countries, they're all second world, third world, nations. But then again, they're central bankers, the very same individuals that's a part of this whole monetary structure, ran by a variety of oligarch families, as well as long 2-3 century old financiers. They're running to the very same solution that happens to come out of nowhere, and they're running from their own problems because entire monetary system of indebtedness and all of the other things that come with it, it stems from centrally controlled, monopolized national currencies. And so how coincidental is that? I can't put it together, but perhaps it's just a fluke. I'll take it's a fluke, Dave, for now. But we got central banks running from their own problems, and the solution is something that is completely out of this world, blue, timely. At the current moment, we were told to expect some type of world currency. Here we are. No one questions it except those that are skeptical. Okay, keep it moving. Now, I put this visual aid together to represent, the tie, I guess, the missing pieces of the puzzle together. And some people take of it what you may. This is just my opinion, but I call this the Rothschild Hegelian dialectic, just because the problem reaction solution is prevalent in everything we face today. And so we were told there will be a problem 34 years ago. And then here we are today. What appears to be a viable solution for some happens to be Bitcoin. And of course, there's other projects out there that are doing extremely well. Okay, fine. Some are good, some are bad, whatever. But then again, this is no coincidence that, as I mentioned at the very start of this, how a part of where we're heading for humanity's sake happens to be the merger of private-public entities with the idea of utilizing what's already in place with the UN, NATO, and things of that nature to further establish world cooperation in a world currency, world governance model. And so at the very top here, I put, give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. And that's a alleged quote from Amschel Rothschild, I guess the father of, central bankonomics, if I was to use that as a word. But the primary problem that was created by the very people who want control of the nation's money, is that, the fiat debasement has occurred in every single country on this planet. There's no way around that. And as a result of that, national indebtedness has been the primary model where the second, third world countries that are now running to Bitcoin, their solution happens to be now we need to undo our own problems or run to the suggested solution, which happens to be in a technology and in a space utilizing software that we were going to anyway, because the dollar and other currencies were predominantly digital in nature already. Okay. And along with that, in every single country, the government has grown significantly, creating more of a welfare state that has made the citizens of those nations dependent upon its government like never before. And so that was the primary problem that was presented as a result of this current model that we're under now, the central banking model. And the reaction to this, what a coincidence, this software and technology has been developed over the last 20 years to put CBDC in conversation nowadays, as well as digital payments and unbanking, unbanked, and financial inclusion, and all those words that people love using. Oh, okay, I'll take of it what you may. And so along with that comes global cooperation like never before after this last 2 years of the world being introduced to this event that we've experienced. There's now calls for governments to come together and to help rebuild and build it back better and everything of that nature. And that right there has brought about 3 or 4 primary reasons for why this is important. And it has to do with, the climate situation, climate concerns, financial inclusion, and as a part of this stakeholder capitalism now, including the ESG and all those new methods of further merging government and private companies together. That's been the reaction to this point of the problems that have been created. And then look at the solutions here. I have just some generic ones, but cryptographic tokens. And so that includes a variety of them. Bitcoin, XRP, central bank digital currencies, a lot of other, projects out there that utilize this technology, which happens to be in its full blossom right now. And of course, you have, as I love to say, we have the monetary oppressor, which happens to be the central banks and government cooperation, as well as a financially oppressed, those that have been, hindered and been crippled by the current monetary and fiscal structure, all excited about heading in the same direction towards a solution, which happens to be through the disguise of freedom and financial sovereignty by being able to be your own bank and hold your own private keys and all those things that on the surface sound, very good and promising. But once again, it plays into exactly where we were told we would be 34 years ago. No coincidence. And then just to show you how this technology of using software and all the things that come with it, it just doesn't stop with our currency, because there's talks of digital ID, which is the global passports. We have the World Health Collaboration now. And of course, the pandemic treaty is on pause for now. I believe that the African nations have shot it down, but it's still on the table, still on the books for something that at some point down the line, who knows how it might be rolled out again, but it's all tech-based. It's all about using software to solve the problem that we were told about 34 years ago. No coincidence whatsoever. And so, Dave, feel free to interject if you want, because if not, I can keep going forever. But, so far, I would assume that watching this from just a generic standpoint, you can see how all these pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together now. And I believe this is just phase one. And I can move forward if you want me to, but there's a lot more to come, which will not be user friendly to everybody, because as we move further in this decentralized cryptographic space, I've never seen a government that plays fair when it comes to technology that's sold as being disruptive. As far as we got politicians now talking about Bitcoin being able to save you, and let me just share with you. I put a tweet out. I think it was yesterday or last night, referring to just some politicians who are very active now in trying to share their opinions on where technology should take us. And so we have, as you guys can see on the screen here, Bears out of Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, introduces new legislation to regulate digital assets. So he's an advocate for digital currencies regulation. And then we have Senator Loomis, who's also very enthusiastic, and she's out here giving presentations and promoting the use of digital assets. But as I mentioned over here, if they share the same level of excitement about reinstating gold and silver back into the public's hands the way that they are with cryptocurrency, we would really be able to distinguish between those who are operating in regards to and that benefits the narrative that we're already steering to, rather than the ones who are interested in actually getting back to some form of a lawful, transparent way of allowing people to have something real and tangible in a world that's transitioning digital anyway. So I have my suspicions on them, but from this little tweet here, I put up more information, just basically showing how the ultimate agenda that we were heading to. So this is just a headline I grabbed because it was easy to find. Just type in crypto assets and fourth industrial revolution, and somebody put together a very interesting piece. And the headline: the crypto assets in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And so this plays into the very same narrative that we're being taught and it's being promoted as of right now. And it has to do with finalizing the nail in the coffin, which would transition us out of the old monetary structure into the new. And it's all hedged on regulatory clarity.
Let me stop you there, Mike. I don't want to take too much of, I want to hear from you. First comment that came to mind is no argument about the restructuring of the currency every 70, 100 years. It's a fact. I try to never argue facts. I look at it a little deeper than that. I think you're right. What I'd add on to is I think it's beyond that this time. It's something that occurs every 300 or 400 years, which is a complete upheaval of the basic structure of society globally.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing. So I want to make that comment. As far as problem, reaction, solution, I was going to interrupt you and ask about that. And the next slide, you just nailed it. But as you know, looking at my works, I know you look, at some of what I do.
Right.
I looked at the other side of the Bitcoin quite some time ago. I think it was 2014. I wrote an article called My 2 Bits About Bitcoin. You can look it up, use that title, you'll find it. What I said was, people said, what do you trust it? What do you think? Well, if I am who I say I am, and I'm truly free market, then who cares what I say? The market will decide, not David Morgan, right?
Right.
But I also went on to say that if it becomes viable, watch out, because the banks do not want to lose their monopoly. Now, they may have started it. We don't know. As you said, nothing happens by coincidence. And then when I got to the end of my research for that one paper, I got a hold of, or he got a hold of me, I forget, Richard Grove, and he talked about how it probably came out of the NSA, or he had some proof that white paper came out from, let's call it, the dark side. So, there's that to factor into your thinking. My point is that the problem, reaction, solution, the solution is so obvious. Now, I've done this crypto conspiracy series, which I would like all of your viewers to have a look at some of it. You'd probably like to see, there's 23 episodes. I would suggest they hit number 1. Number 4, I believe, where we go into the MIT Epstein connection to Bitcoin. Number 14, we have Kurt Wuckert from, I think it's Coin something. Sorry, he's an archivist or historian for Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah.
And proves the theory that John and I come up with, that the powerful bankers have pretty much taken control of Bitcoin. It's very much similar to the banking system that already exists. Well, you're kidding. You don't understand Bitcoin, David. It's all FUD. Well, no. It's like 98% controlled by the power elite.
Right.
It's the only 2 or 3% of us, free market thinkers that are Bitcoin advocates,
Right.
So there's that part of the story. But I said all that to say this, Mike. Another little brief series I'm doing, I'll continue on. I'll put this out for everybody. I can hardly wait to get it into the hands of people that follow my work, your work. But I may put this into the silver psyop category, which means I think there's a case to be made. John Perez made it, that this whole digital currency that's the solution was a psychological operation to move people's money away from real honest money into the solution, the central bank digital currency. And I just want to pause a moment there. I don't want to talk too much, but I want your view, and I have to get it out.
Right.
There's nothing more decentralized than a gold or silver coin.
Correct.
No
100%.
traceability.
Right.
It's the most honest money for honest people, and it's analog. I mean, we are not digital beings, although, and I'm digressing to come back. I don't want to go too big on a tangent, but they want this technologically advanced human that will be a part machine, part human. That's
Right.
the last thing you want is an all digital anything, really.
Right.
Because you're missing out what's called the third force. There's the right and the left, and then there's that space in between. There's up
Right.
and there's always people are third force blind. They don't realize, what I'll call the spiritual aspect. But I went off on a tangent. I want to come back. Gold and silver are the best decentralized financial system that's ever worked for humanity. It works for us, the people. It doesn't work for the bankers because the only way they can cheat, which they've done many times, is to make up more receipts that gold or silver exists and pretend that it's really there. And what they've done is become fraudulent.
Right.
But it's not gold or silver's fault. It's the fault of human nature, if you want to call it that. So I'd like the comment on psychological operation. Do you think that was part of the master plan, or it just worked out that way, or it has no meaning?
Well, I think it was all strategically done intentionally because of, as of the visuals I shown beforehand, just showing how the goal all along was to create a central entity that would eventually. So, and this is where I think everything is trending towards that end goal. And of course, being a believer in Christ, I love to refer to the biblical nature of things and how, being able to look at how history has unfolded. We were told the certain chain of events that would occur until we get to the end. I believe that, of course, we've been in end times for quite some time now, but things are becoming more clear now as to how the kingdom of darkness is, like, if I can use that, is working overtime now to execute an agenda, as if there's a sense of time urgency on their part, meaning that, we have all the higher ups in society. And I say that, a lot of the dark forces at work now happens to exist in three key areas: finance, politics, and entertainment. All three of those right now, we've witnessed our country completely go off the cliff as far as a lack of morality, lack of any type of foundation of soundness. And so to me, that right there resembles the fact that there's a greater plan at work here. And of course, our currency is one of it. The political structure is another. And the goal all along, just from the visual aids, was to remove metals from the people's hands. And I did an article a while ago talking about it takes a generation for people to lose sight of what was before that time frame. And so this goes back to the 1933 Gold Banking Reserve Act that removed gold from the people's hands. And of course, it wasn't until 1974. So that was approximately 40 or so years where gold went from a money to a commodity, just in sheer words, but it was treated differently. And therefore, my generation in particular know nothing about that. And of course, with silver being moved from coinage in 64, here we are today. Silver is the most, important strategic asset in humanity. But yet, once again, it gets no airplay. Even politicians don't talk about it. So the goal all along was to make sure gold and silver never was returned back into the monetary system. And so it's up to the individual. And I always tell people on my side is that the system, Federal Reserve notes in particular, were introduced as being redeemable, even though the banking sector no longer acknowledges it. If you are monetarily literate and realize that you're still holding onto a receipt with nothing behind it, it's your responsibility to go out and redeem those notes in according to what you feel comfortable and able to do, on your own. But just history has shown that fiat currencies always return to zero, as we're told that. And as of right now, regardless of the manipulated price of an ounce of silver, whatever it is today, historically speaking, it always has appreciated in fiat terms, just because every single fiat note, whether it's a peso, euro, whatever, it will be held accountable in reference to how many units of paper or digits of that same currency unit it will take you to actually acquire 1 ounce of one of these, shiny things right here. So this is the best version of a stable coin we could ever have. And it's intentionally taken out of our psyche so that the youth, or the younger generation, will not know anything about gold and silver as a part of our history. They'll only know paper for now, and then digits for our kids' kids. And so, of course, there's no coincidence. It's done on purpose. And that's why I have a hard time believing there's some people out here that throw out such words as, Nasera, Jacera, quantum financial system. And they're saying that, there's gold, and silver, and there's paydays and monthly payments. I'm thinking like, that sounds like a fairy tale come true if it was to. I don't want to be one complete pessimist and say that, the world is doomed, is coming to an end. No, I don't believe that at all. And that's from the spiritual side of me. Those that are in Christ are on the winning side. But even still, there's some practical things we all should do to protect ourselves financially, spiritually, as well as in the material world, food, water, shelter, all those basic things. Because I'm sure by now everybody can realize it. The world is literally turning itself upside down, and it's going to be a great shakeout from those that know truth and those who don't. And it's just more so at this current moment, what side of history will you be on? Will you be on the side of history that prefers having, actual real dominion of real world resources? Or will you be one of the people that's sucked into the trapment of, profiting off this transition with digital versions of whatever you're, associating with? There's room for both of it, but realize, where they want you away, where they want to take you away from, which happens to be the real world. So long-winded answer, but hopefully, I answered.
No, I'm loving this discussion. I'm sure we could go for hours. Just added on to what you just last said, the idea that we're in the metaverse and that will be our home. In other words, that you'll be more comfortable, be an avatar in some make-believe world than you are in real life. How pathetic is that?
Right.
And yet people are buying into it. Coming back to a thought, and that's the irony of silver. And what do I mean? The one thing that's needed for the digital age is silver. Nothing. It's more important, probably. Of course, maybe electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I always have to say energy is vitally important. But if you want a digital world, you need silver. And so we have the power, if we only realized it, that if we took the silver in our own hands, we have the most powerful element that the central bank digital currency system needs in order to pursue their end goal, which is ultimate control over each and every one of us.
Right.
And freedom, there is a correlation between honest money and freedom.
Right.
And not too many people address that topic. I know Bob Moriarty did with the discussion on Kitco. I haven't had time to watch it yet, but I will.
Yeah.
But I really like to think about solutions, Mike. I mean, we've been calling this out. Well, let me go back to the psychological part. You already answered that for me, and thank you. So I've said that because we know what they want, which is their control, to be even further control. I mean, no cash, everything you buy will be tracked, traced, and taxed, probably at point of sale. Right. They'll also be tied to a social credit score, although they may obfuscate that term, but it'll be based on your good credit or your compliance level or how good a citizen you are, or whatever that means.
Right.
But I've said that that's what they want. We're pretty clear on that. What we're not clear on is if it's going to be implemented or not. In other words, what the blowback will be.
Right.
So what's your thoughts on that? Will there be a resistance movement? Will there be people that just drop out and move to the country and live off the grid? Will there be, what's your thinking on that?
Great question. So it's my personal opinion that, so ultimately, money in our currency and monetary system issues that we're having now, those to me are just, side effects or symptoms of the much greater problem. Right. And as I hinted at earlier, our biggest problem we're experiencing is what I call a governance crisis. Yeah. We can't fix the money until we fix the current government structure that we're under. And I think we've been duped into thinking that the two-tier political system is the solution when ultimately, they're all working towards the same agenda at this current moment. And so basically helping people understand that, we, the people, or each and every individual as we are, we're responsible for our own decision-making. We were given dominion of this earth, from our creator, and that the rights that we have are not given to us by anybody that's supposedly elected into office, and that they are not right now operating in our best interest. So if we were to understand that, regardless of your favorite political party, what you were brought up under or whatever, look at the response based upon the last 2 years, and you'll realize that it was regardless of party, they were all working towards the same agenda. So we need to basically right now get ready to address the fact that your representatives are not representing you. If you don't believe in what they say, then you must speak out. You must become more of a political activist in a sense where you are more outspoken and sharing your opinions and beliefs and ideals so that more people can have this type of dialogue. Because without this, we'll just be sheep, will just led astray, thinking that there's going to be somebody that's promising us something that can actually make a difference in our lives, and that's not the case. So moving forward, I think we need all to become more politically involved in our world affairs. And if you have 300 or so million Americans that actually share their viewpoints, get educated on how to make a difference in their own lives, it starts with each and every one of us individually. If we were to do that collectively, we would definitely make a much bigger impact in how this country is ran, rather than just sitting back and waiting. Some people are waiting on 2024, thinking that there's an individual out there that's going to come back and make things right. But my personal opinion is that between now and then, a good portion of people have been lulled to sleep and thinking that if you do nothing, just be complacent, you be compliant, everything will be done for you. No, those days are done. So the best test at that right now is this new push on the Second Amendment, and how this current administration mentioned that the Second Amendment was not written in stone, or it was to be interpreted, or whatever they're trying to sell us now. Bit by bit, they're trying to encroach on our freedoms even more so. And if we don't stand up individually, and everyone has a platform. You just call your family, your friends, your loved ones. Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your beliefs with individuals. And I think one by one, we could definitely make a much bigger impact than we could if we decided to do nothing and just sit back and wait for somebody else. Not quite sure if that answered the question, but I just felt I had to get that out.
No, good. Well, in your honor, or the honor of everybody, you can't see the bottom, but it says, when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty.
Right.
And that's pretty close to what you just said, or
right.
That's what I heard.
And now that I think about it, it's inevitable that there will be a two-tier society like there always have been. There's the haves and have-nots. That's going to continue out. Like, Christ mentioned that, there'll always be poverty. There's no way around that. But then again, it doesn't have to impact the individual who's awake and aware and actually out there getting information relevant to how they can improve their own livelihoods, as well as their contribution to humanity. And so even though the world is about to shift, we're about to go through, I believe, that we're being told the nice word recession. They're selling us on a recession. But my belief is that it's going to be a lot more dangerous than that. I'm thinking like depression or beyond, or something we've never witnessed, because it's not an isolated event, it's global. But then with that, through the spiritual essence of things, like, your faith is also, I believe, a currency that allows you to interact with yourself and your creator, to where you don't have to have the amount of a shakeout that the majority will have, just because it's inevitable. We're on Earth. We got to be real here. It's going to impact a lot of people, but it doesn't have to hit you as hard as it would other people. So, but there will be the haves and have-nots continuing on throughout. But with practical knowledge, you can take care of yourself as best you can, I'm sure.
Well, another compliment to you, Mike. I mean, I've known you for a while now, and I think this is on the spiritual side. A lot has to do with vibration, energy level, and when you speak the truth, you have a lot of power,
right?
And you've been doing it for a long time.
I appreciate
and
it,
you're
man.
passionate about it, like I am, which means you affect those around you, and you may bring them up, even though it's a dire subject. A lot of people want to go nana nana and don't want to hear about it, or they want to blind themselves to it and just wait on somebody else, or watch a movie and it's all going to work out because someone else is going to do something, rather than what the most important part of freedom is, and that's responsibility.
Right.
As you said several times during this talk. So I'm going to move on to something I don't think I've ever asked anyone before. I'll start because I don't want to put you on the spot too much, and it's a good question and you'll like it.
Looking forward to it.
But when you're out there in the general public, they don't know who, Mike is. They don't know what Rethinking the Dollar is, but you have an opportunity every day, if you're out of the house, to interact with somebody. And, a lot of us just stay to ourselves. I do. But let's say you've got that ability to bring the message some way or another. Now, there's a couple ways that I do it. One of them is, the most often that I do is like at a restaurant, a hotel where I'm staying. Once in a while, I've done it at a gas station. I'll just lay some silver on it.
Yeah.
Usually not a full ounce, although I've done that in the past. And sometimes I give them my business card, and sometimes I don't. As a business person, every time I do that, I should probably give them a business card. But I've just now did an interview recently on the goldbacks, which are 24 karat gold in currency form.
Right.
And they're pretty cool looking. I bought a fair amount, so I'm going to use those as well. And that's a way to spread the word in a subtle way. And the gentleman that invented the goldback, I interviewed him, And I liked his approach. It's like again at a restaurant, rather than tip in fiat,
Right.
ask the host or hostess, have you ever been given a tip in gold before? And of
Right.
course, the answer is going to be no. And there's an opportunity to open the door. Not,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to build my website up or any of that. I'm trying to spread the word to people in a way that's not offensive to them,
Mhm.
or where they'll be their curiosity factor, let's say. So that's how I do it a couple of ways. Is there anything that you do out there in the general public kind of wake people up?
Yeah, I do. I have, and I need to get back to it. But I'll share. I was trying to find. I'll actually share with you. So on if you don't mind, on the screen here, here's something that. So me being in Metro Detroit, I called it RTD in the streets, and so I haven't done it in a year or two. But simply, I get out there and I talk about the dollar. I asked them what. I went to a dollar store and I say, what can you buy for $1? And so I got some of the most interesting responses to where people. I actually had a little pamphlet, and so people actually were appreciative of the fact that everybody I came in contact with, they learned something new. And so I'm going to do that again. Summer's here now. So I'm about to get back out there, but that's my way of trying to get into the streets, actually going into the streets. And so I'll definitely be doing more of that. But then again, I interviewed the gentleman from the Goldbacks, I think about a month ago myself.
Mm.
And so definitely I came up with ideas. I'm going to take the Goldbacks on the street, silver. So I have my own little, rounds that I produce on my side as well. So there's different ways of getting out there and I'm going to do it. So yeah, I'm a fan of it. It just takes time and a team, and it's hard to execute that by yourself because I can't hold the camera and interview. And so I'm still learning on my side. But that's to me, that's never been more important. And that's as I say, helping people understand the monetary gospel or monetary good news of what money really is. And then of course, if you can incorporate your faith in that as well, man, that's a double whammy. You're winning one for the kingdom as well as you helping people in the here and now. So it's a win-win all the way around. But I'm back out on the streets. Probably I'm gonna do one next week, Dave, just for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've only done one that I could recall like that years ago. Gold had hit $1,000,
Uh-huh.
and people were screaming at the time. This was a bubble, was a top in gold, and all this stuff. So I got at the time my webmaster lived in town. He
Hmm.
doesn't anymore. So I called him up. So you got a new job.
Hmm.
I'm going down to the park downtown, and I'm going to just randomly ask people if they know what a Krugerrand is.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I don't want to make this too much about me, but I did similar. I really like that. I'm just going to make a suggestion, Mike. You can take it or leave it. When you're
Please do.
showing the physical, piece of paper,
Hmm.
you might want to take, a silver dollar, and a dollar is
Hmm.
almost three. It's a little more than 3/4 of an ounce of silver. So the Treasury has it wrong. The new silver eagle is 1 ounce
Yeah.
and says dollar on it, but they're wrong because the
Yeah.
dollar, they're giving you too much silver for that dollar weight. But anyway, my point is you show them a dollar and then you show them a silver dollar
Hmm.
and you tell them the facts
Yeah.
that back in the 18th, 19th century, that was a day's wage.
Right.
That was what now you can't get anything in the dollar store because they've upped it to $1.25, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and this is what, you know, when you and I or whoever, it's not us, it's the message, not the messenger, although he's
Right.
a damn good one. Excuse me, God. But that's what we need to do, I think, is just spark that curiosity because as it's been said in the past by my betters, once the system collapses, everyone knows how it might have been saved.
Right.
Everyone's going to say, "Oh, decentralized currency was actually this stuff in my pocket." That I could have exchanged at one point. I could have exchanged fiat for silver, or
Mm.
silver or gold, or a gold back, or I could have, but I didn't, and I wish I would have.
Right.
And that's what we want to prevent. We want as many people to understand and make their own choice. I'm free
Right.
market, but I
Right.
want it to be an educated choice. And the one thing you never hear about on Wall Street or the mainstream financial press is the merits of owning physical gold and silver, something they never talk about.
Hmm.
Of course, they called me up when gold was hitting 1,000 the first time, and it was a bubble and all this stuff. And I went out on the street to prove we're hardly at a bubble. When we're at a bubble, everybody has the word gold on their mind.
Right.
Like we're in a bubble of the tech stocks. Everyone knows that Tesla is the best stock you should have ever bought, right?
All right.
It's pervasive. The whole society at large knows about Tesla. So if we're in a bubble in gold or silver, it's on everyone's mind. Of course, they suppress it in many ways. One is psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
but of course, it wasn't. So my whole point was, here's one of the most minted gold coins since gold coins were minted back in 1974 in the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a gold Krugerrand. Do you even know what it is? And just to go a step further, there was one Canadian down at the Spokane Park that knew what it was, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else didn't. I told them, of course, it's pretty obvious when you hand them a gold coin, it's a gold coin.
Yeah.
But yet they didn't know the word Krugerrand. They didn't know that there was a gold coin. They didn't know they could buy a gold. You know what I'm saying? So
Now,
we're
did that one
hardly in a
person?
bubble.
Did that one person get to keep that coin?
Yeah, no, I've been very generous. I've run contests and given away 100-ounce bars. I've given away gold. I gave away, I think, a full ounce
Yeah.
1 year. No, I didn't. There was one little girl. This is funny. I'm sort of digressing, but there's a little girl, 3 or 4, and I put the coin in her hand. She didn't want to give it back. She intrinsically knew or whatever. It's too shiny, felt good. I don't know what was going through her 4-year-old brain, but then she did not want to get that coin back.
Oh man, you set her up and broke her heart.
Yeah.
But no,
But
man,
I
we're
think this
definitely
might be.
changing time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I think we probably covered the most important points. I wanted you to give the background that you prepared. Thank you so much. I wanted to get into the crypto conspiracy
Mm-hmm.
and why this isn't probably a solution. And get people to rethink the dollar year moniker, because we want honest money for honest people. And it's a very subtle way to exert your power.
Right.
I mean, people say vote with your dollars or vote with your money, and they have the ability to do that. There's our type of channels. I would say mine is shadow banned. I have little doubt about it.
Yeah, mine is.
Regardless, I'll keep sharing the message, but it's tough. There's the mainstream media that has so many people programmed, and then there's us that are trying to break the spell.
Mhm.
But again, I'll come back to what I said a moment ago about your spirit and your vibration and the power of truth. And Mike, of all the people I've met throughout my career that are like-minded and do similar work to what I do, you're one of my favorites. You really are, and I appreciate all you've done.
Appreciate it. Well, no, I just, my hope, and of course, shadow ban, truth is suppressed right now just because, we're, as I mentioned, the kingdom of darkness is trying to, ramp up things. But, I realize that, I'm not called to reach everybody, just the right one. And the people who have resonated with the most with me are the ones that, the Lord drew to me. So like, I know my numbers ain't as good as the biggest channels out there, but I'm not trying to reach everybody, just the right one that I can be impacting their lives. And that's what you've done as well, as far as, impacting my life. So I appreciate you. And thank you for the opportunity to connect. Definitely. I enjoyed this.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll have you back. We'll see what happens. And remember, people, it's just because that's what they want doesn't mean that that's what they're going to get. So the
100%.
end is yet to be determined.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.